Hey guys, okay, so this is the first half of Antarctic Journal, 4 months at the bottom of the world. You're only going to hear half of it today, and then you're going to work on your story map assignment. The story map assignment is in your folder. The rubric is also posted on Canvas for, and it's called Antarctic Journal Story Map, I believe. So you will do half of it today, then you will watch the other half and do the other half tomorrow, okay? All right, so the story is called Antarctic Journal, 4 months at the bottom of the world, and it is a narrative nonfiction story, which means that it's a story being told in story format, but it is a nonfiction story. This is a narration or a story being told by somebody who actually went to Antarctica and spent 4 months there. Her name was Jennifer Owings Dewey. That is the name of the author of our story, and she's telling about her experiences. This week, next week, and the following week, we're going to talk about first-hand accounts versus second-hand accounts. And a first-hand account means that the person who's telling the story actually lived and experienced that story. So this is an example of a first-hand account because Miss Dewey actually did these things and is telling the story as it happened to her. Okay? All right, so when you look on pages 378 and 379, you will notice that it looks like it's typed because it was. You had typed it on a typewriter, so when they printed it, they made it look like that. And then the second thing you should notice is that above the paragraphs on page 378, there is a date, November 27th, and there is a location, Litchfield Island. So each of the sections of this story, there are 6 of them. Each of the sections is broken down by a date and a location. And when you do your story map, you're going to label your pictures according to the date and the location. So in the first picture that you have, you will label it November 27th and Litchfield Island because that's where it took place, okay? Up at the top, in the blue writing, I'm going to read starting at the top of the page, and that will kind of give us some background about what we're reading, okay? The author has long had a vision of herself exploring Antarctica, what she calls the windiest, coldest, most forbidding region on Earth. She has recently traveled by plane and ship to this icy continent. Her first exciting encounter was with humpback whales when her ship stopped to let them pass. Now she has settled in at Palmer Station, where she will be living for 4 months. During her visit to Antarctica, she plans to sketch, photograph, and write about this fascinating place. November 27th, Litchfield Island. In fair weather, I go to Litchfield Island and spend the day, sometimes the night. Litchfield is 3 miles from Palmer by inflatable boat, a protected island visited by 2 or 3 people a year. Guys, this is very remote, like nobody goes there, right? Before going to Litchfield, I'm shown how to walk on open ground in Antarctica. An inch of moss takes 100 years to grow. The careless scuff of a boot heel could rip out 200 years of growth in seconds. I pack my food and extra clothes in a waterproof sea bag. A day pack holds pencils, pens, and paper for drawing and writing. There is no fresh water on the island. I carry 2 one-gallon canteens, which is like a jug that you use to carry water. Each island has an emergency cache of food and supplies marked with a flag available if a person gets stranded during a storm. That's one of our highlighted words, so obviously we need to know what that means. If you are stranded, it means that you are kind of stuck somewhere. You can't get away, okay? So as somebody who's stranded would be like not able to be rescued right away, okay? That's why they would need a stash of emergency supplies. Alone after being dropped on the island, I hear birds call, the whine of the wind, the waves pounding gravel shores, and no human sounds except my breathing. Twilight falls and I crawl into my tent, alert and unable to sleep for a long time, listening to the sounds of the Antarctic night. Okay, so that was her first journal entry. That was her first experience, okay? The next one is several days later on page 380. It says December 3rd, Litchfield Island again. One of the larger islands offshore, Litchfield, has a penguin rookery or nesting area. So a rookery is a nesting area. It tells you right after it what a rookery is. On the gently sloping western edge. The ground is rocky but flat enough for penguins to build nests, with a beach close by for gathering small gray nest stones. The rookery is occupied by 200 or 300 penguins. It's small by penguin standards, which means like it's typically bigger than that. That's actually a small rookery. The penguins are nearly all adelies. That's how you say that, adelies. Named in 1838 by Dumont d'Urville after his wife. I wonder, did they look like her, act like her, or was he just missing her? That's kind of funny, right? Pairs greet each other at the nest with calls like braying donkeys. Okay, if you've never heard a donkey sound and braying, they're like, wah, wah. They're really annoying. It's super loud, okay? So he's comparing the sounds that he's hearing, or she's comparing the sounds that she's hearing to braying donkeys. So it would be very annoying. They rub chests and bellies, flap wings, stretch necks, and reach for the sky with their bills. Behavior called ecstatic display. And a display is like something that you can see, that you can do. So that's how they greet each other and interact. I find a sheltered perch by the rookery and put my 6-pound metal typewriter on a flat rock. The penguins begin to wander over. They huddle close, smelling of guano. Ew, that's poo, by the way. And salt water, gently tugging at my clothing with their bills. One bold bird takes my hat and goes off with it. They are curious about the tap-tap-tapping noise of the typewriter. They walk up and across it, tugging at the paper tucked into the roller. I let them have their way. Human visitors may not touch penguins or any wildlife, but the penguins can take their time checking us out. I follow penguins stone collecting, real work for an adelies. They carry 1 stone at a time in their bills. It requires hundreds of trips to complete their nest. What can we infer about penguins? They're pretty hardworking, right? If it takes hundreds of trips to build the nest, they work really hard. Placing a stone takes time. With the stone in its bill, the penguin circles the nest, bowing like a butler. A butler is like, one of those guys that answers the doors for rich people and wears like, fancy suit and stuff. So she's comparing him to that. Finally deciding where the stone is needed most, the bird drops it and shuffles away to the beach for another. If one penguin steals a stone from another, a noisy argument erupts. Frustrated birds shriek like squabbling children, but they never come to blows. So they never actually fight. They just make a lot of noise and then they're like, here we go again. Okay. And the last section we'll read today is on page 382. It says December 20th, Palmer Station. Palmer Station is a scientific base, and that is where she is staying. It's her accommodations. It's where she's going to live while she's there. Okay, so that's really the only residence in Antarctica is scientific bases, okay, where scientists live during the time that they're there while they're doing their studying of Antarctica, okay? All right, so December 20th, Palmer Station. I have learned that the largest animal on Earth, the 100-ton blue whale, eats only one of the smallest animals on Earth, krill. There are more krill in the seas than there are stars in the visible universe. Krill is one link in a simple food chain. Penguins, seals, and whales eat krill. In turn, the tiny shrimp-like krill eat phytoplankton, one-celled plants that bloom in the sea in spring and summer. My new friend Carl, an oceanographer, said we ought to try eating krill since so many animals thrive on it. Remember, thrive means to do really well on something. In the biolab, we scooped krill into a jar. We got a small fry pan, then melted butter and cooked up the krill. Someone said, add garlic. Somebody said, how about salt and pepper? These were added. When the mixture looked ready, we ate it. Tastes like butter, one person said. More like garlic, another said. Tastes like butter and garlic, Carl said. Krill don't have their own taste, I concluded. Okay, how did she conclude that? Think about it for a second, okay? If all they could taste was butter and garlic and salt and pepper, and no other taste, then it would be able or clear to assume that krill actually doesn't have a taste. Okay, That is the first half of the story. Now that we finished reading the first half, I want you to look for, in your folder, your paper that looks like this. Says Antarctic Journal on it, okay? And you are going to work on only the first half. We folded up the paper before we went home, and you guys are going to do only the first 3 boxes. In each box, you have to have the date and location of that section of the story that you're drawing, okay? You have to have a sentence in each of the boxes that tells what's happening in that section. You have to include at least 6 of the vocabulary words that are in the sentences that are in the story. So you have to have at least 1 word in each event. So in these first 3 boxes, you need to have at least 1 vocabulary word in each of those boxes, okay? I do not want you to copy the sentence that was in the story. You need to write your own sentence with those words, okay? Make sure that when you do these, your work is neat, that it is colored, that your sentences have capital letters and punctuation. All of that is spelled out on your paper, but it's also stuff that's expected every time we do work, okay? So work on the first half of your map today, and we will watch this, or you'll watch the second half of the story and work on the second half of the map tomorrow on Tuesday, okay? If you have any questions, you can go, open the Zoom meeting, and I will be there to answer questions for you, okay? Get to work and do a good job.